Welcome to Whisperer of Madness. If you're enjoying the story, consider liking the video and subscribing. It really helps grow the channel and this community. Alliance and the Return a magic robe made from an antique oddity was extremely fear-inducing, even though the effect of amplifying the spell fivefold was only unique to a certain type of spell. Leyland, of course, wouldn't be so silly as to ask him for the primordial magic robe so that he could study it for a while. He would definitely be met with rejection. He didn't even entertain such a thought, instead using a better method to study the spell formation. "AI Chip, how's it going?" Leyland asked secretly. "Beep, magic robe spell formation has been recorded. Determined to be an antique lightning rune, 89.7% of it usable." The AI chip sent its feedback faithfully. At the same time, a humongous collection of lightning ring spell formation images was projected in front of Leyland's eyes. Over 100,000 lightning runes were clustered together, densely packed and appearing incomparably exquisite. Such a spell formation. It shouldn't be limited to just booming thunderclap or even lightning spells. It should be able to be used at other levels as well. Leyland's pupils shone brightly. Eam can't do it himself. Even though he has the spell formation, he can't perform a systematic breakdown or derivations. After all, the brain of a Magus cannot be compared to a technologically advanced brain. The operational load involved is sufficient to make him crumble in despair, but all of this isn't a problem for me. At this thought, a smear of excitement spread across his face. "Great! Let's return, Leyland. In order to celebrate our alliance, I intend to hold a majestic banquet at my residence." Eam's pupils contained a joyous look, and he seemed to think that Leyland was also in high spirits because of their strong alliance. "I would be honored." Leyland smiled modestly as his body floated up and he returned alongside Eam to the Liars family's headquarters, which was a castle in the Metal Mountains. Night fell. Although the subterranean world didn't have a concept of night and day, Leyland continued to artificially use spells or sunstones to adjust his biological clock to work and rest. The lights went out in order, or rather became more dim. The castle, where the grand feast was just held, started to quiet down as though it had entered a deep sleep. Leyland, who was cordially received by the Liars family, was now in a luxurious bedroom. The bedroom was decorated exquisitely. All the objects in it showed indications of being maintained by spells, and they appeared to be very precious. After sending away a beautiful maid, Leyland laid on the sofa by himself, his pupils twinkling with the radiance of the AI chip. "Beep, antique amplification lightning rune has been recorded. Beginning analysis." With the AI chip's horrifyingly fast operational capacity, the lightning spell formation that Leyland had scanned previously was now being broken down continuously at lightning speed. The many lightning runes distorted themselves and looked just like tadpoles. They were firmly recorded by the AI chip, which analyzed their specific functions. Although this spell formation contained over 100,000 runes and could be said to be extremely complicated and refined, it was an easy task for Leyland, who had the AI chip. It was only a matter of time. Leyland, who was temporarily idle, recalled the scene during the banquet, and a smile couldn't help but creep onto the corners of his lips. The Liars family was certainly not very well adjusted to this unfamiliar Magus. Previously, he'd fought so hard with them, but after a trip out, he had turned into a distinguished guest. This was especially so for the Warlock that Leyland had held captive previously. Seeing Leyland was practically like meeting a ghost, and he almost made a run for it, which was a great blunder. Regardless, Magi and Warlocks were all humans who turned superior and skillful with age. After Eam announced the news of his alliance with Leyland and the other affiliated powers, they had lost themselves initially, but managed to adjust themselves to it soon after. Even the Morning Star Warlocks who had committed a mistake earlier specially came over to apologize later on, and regained the graceful bearing unique to Morning Star Warlocks. This left Leyland secretly impressed. Furthermore, although Eam had kept the information about Leyland hailing from the surface confidential, he didn't cover up Leyland's identity as a rank 5 Warlock. After all, not any random Magus was able to form an alliance with the Liars family. When Leyland's status as a rank 5 Warlock was declared, the other elders from the Liars family immediately cleared their doubts about Eam's decision, who was their Grand Elder. This was a rank 5 Warlock. Such a big shot was not a common sight in the Arthur Empire. For example, the only rank 5 in their entire family was their Grand Elder, Eam. On average, the strength of a warlock far exceeded that of a magus of the same rank. There was simply no doubt about that. Therefore, Leyland alone was qualified enough to be an ally of the liar's family. Even without Elder Eames' subtle revelations to back him up, Leyland the warlock possessed a great amount of influence. However, they're really being overly enthusiastic. Leyland stroked his chin. Recalling the unmasked anticipation in the maid's eyes, he sighed rather helplessly. He was now busy analyzing the ancient lightning runes. Where would he find the time and effort to do such things? Besides, although bloodline warlocks could bear successors with bloodline energy when coupling with magi or even some humans, for some unknown reason warlocks with differing bloodlines could never produce descendants of mixed blood. According to Leyland's conjectures, this was because the bloodline energies of both parties would fight too much, and thus mixed blood descendants were not possible. But if their bloodlines were from identical sources, such as if they were both Chem-Yin warlocks, for example, this wouldn't pose a problem, and the purity and saturation of their descendants' bloodline was guaranteed. Leyland thought about something else. If Eam doesn't mind, I could probably intermarry an average magus in the future and obtain the bloodline of the thorned thunderbird. After all, this is the ancient bloodline of a rank 6 creature. Even if they want our giant Chem-In serpent bloodline in exchange, it would be worth it. Although the Ouroboros clan was made up of descendants of Chem-In warlocks and other bloodlines, there were no warlocks within a few external organizations. Leyland had only transformed Krupp's bloodline in the south coast. There were others who had gathered by his side over these few days, people who were initially descendants of the Farlier family. Most of them were average humans, but it was still feasible if they were to intermarry with this bloodline. But why does it not seem very possible? Even if it's a concubine's child, it's not very possible that they would allow them to marry out of their family. Many warlocks are incomparably prejudiced when it comes to the orthodox practice of protecting their family's bloodline and preventing it from leaking out. Leyland felt rather glad after tossing this thought out of his head in an instant. Fortunately, he hadn't been discovered when he was extracting bloodlines today. Even that Morning Star warlock was in a disoriented state and had been confused by Leyland's dreamscape force field, leading him to believe that he was weak because of his grave injuries. If Eam knew about this, perhaps there would be more trouble. No, he might already know about this, just that he's restraining his emotions. If that's the case, I'll have to adopt some measures in preparation. Leyland stroked his chin, his pupils showing that he was in deep thought. Even though they had already established an alliance, he didn't trust Eam very much, and it was probably the same for Eam as well. In actuality, if not for the fact that both of them happened to be situated at both ends of the passage, each controlling the other's weak point, this alliance wouldn't have been established so easily. Both parties would put up the necessary preventive measures. Leyland, are you serious about not staying here longer? No, it's really fine. Leyland and Eam were now standing where the Thunderbird Holy Land used to be, outside the palace where the passage was. After briefly inspecting the area, Leyland had gained some knowledge about this region. He wanted to return above ground on the pretext of the energy needed to sustain passage crack being on the verge of exhaustion, and was bidding Eam goodbye. The trade between the underground and the surface poses tremendous profits. I believe that both of us will have endless benefits from this exchange. With cooperation from both sides, we can maintain this mode of transport for our benefits. Before he departed, Leyland looked at Eam with a sincere expression in his eyes. Of course, perhaps you might want to come with me and see what it's like above ground. Although the Magus world above ground has declined for a long time, it has gradually begun to regain its glory from the ancient times, and there are beings who are not in the least inferior to King Arthur. King Arthur was the legendary founder of the Arthur Empire, and was also a Magus of at least rank 6, an equivalent of a monarch in the central continent. There was movement in Eam's pupils. Upon hearing that there were magi above ground who were not inferior to King Arthur, it seemed as though a different kind of radiance flashed in his shining eyes, a complex emotion that was an amalgamation of restraining fear, anticipation, and traces of dread all mixed together. Eam thought for a while, before shaking his head and refused. All right, but that will require a bit of time. There's a lot of family affairs that I need to tend to do to my long sleep, as well as some preparations before we begin trade. It's all complicated. Actually, I hope that the people above ground can cooperate with us to break through the seal together. In this manner, things will be a lot more effortless on my end, and we'll be able to bring forward the time of the passage opening, bringing us much more profits. Of course, I will start on the tasks in this aspect once I return. Leyland nodded and gave a slight salute. His actions were incomparably smooth, and his etiquette was so perfect that there was nothing to be picked on, just like an ancient nobleman who had put in hard work and numerous revisions. Farewell then, Mr. Eam. As he spoke, a ray of light that formed an arched door had already formed behind Leyland. I look forward to meeting you again. Eam nodded, his face expressionless as he resumed his previously proud and aloof image. Leyland smiled and stepped into the arched door. The radiance vanished with a puff as the place reverted to its dark and tranquil state. Eam stood there, stupefied, his pupils occasionally flashing with all kinds of light. His thoughts were a mystery. Secretly sneaking back, light flashed as Leyland's figure appeared in the central hall of the Eternal River Pocket Dimension. Enormous white stone pillars stood erect across the hall, and through the circular open space at the top one could see the light from a morning star spell formation. This expedition underground was really successful. Leyland looked around his surroundings. The 4 void assassins were still strictly adhering to his previous order. He couldn't help but laugh before putting the void assassins and defensive spell formations away. Lord Leyland, how's the situation, my lord? Once the mechanisms outside were removed, 2 silhouettes rushed in. They were the highest ranks of the light and dark magi, Nanav and Any respectively. The impatience was clear on their faces, yet there was nothing they could do except wait outside. This won't do. The seal has been badly damaged. Although I tried my best to mend it, it's still hard to predict whether it can be delayed by a century like I said before. We might only have a few decades left, or even less time, Leyland said with a straight face, making both Nanav and Any turn grim. Is there no other way, my lord? Nanav asked, one last glimmer of hope in his voice, but the only reply he got was a slow shake of Leyland's head. Time flew by in the blink of an eye, and more than 10 days had passed. Leyland had also concluded his investigation into the Eternal Plains Pocket Dimension and returned to his hometown in the Chernobyl Islands. Krupp had led a few of the remaining Farlier descendants there, successfully regaining control of the territory that originally belonged to the Farlier family. Under the assistance of numerous external forces, not only had he acquired their old territory back, but he'd also expanded it, preparing to build an empire that would belong entirely to the Farlier family. Leyland had waited outside the castle that initially belonged to the Farlier family for days, receiving all of the descendants of the Farlier family. It was only after he put a good deal of arrangements in place that he vanished mysteriously. What the Farlier family proclaimed to the outside world was that their ancestor had already left the south coast and had gone to a vaster part of the Magus world. Although they didn't know if Leyland's departure was true or false, and couldn't confirm whether he would return in the future, both the dark and light magi heaved a unanimous sigh of relief. To them, Leyland was a representation of the realization of a higher realm, but he was also a pair of shackles that bound them. There was simply no room for a being of Morning Star status in the tiny south coast. Even the historical Great Magus Surhome mysteriously disappeared after his glory days. According to speculations by Magi later on, he had gone away in search of more vast worlds. Leyland did not leave behind any methods to break through to Morning Star, which made a few rank 3 Magi feel that it was a great pity. However, having one less contender suppressing them was like taking a burden off their shoulders. The influential groups within the dark and light Magi cast their sights on the empty land left behind by the spirit-slaying sect after they were eliminated. After so many years of unrest, as well as the sudden collapse of the spirit-slaying sect after the Gargimel's extermination, an exceedingly plentiful amount of space was left for the dark and light Magi. Open rivalry and veiled strife centered around the inheritance of the spirit-slaying sect, which caused numerous ripples within the dark and light Magi. The real influential powers such as the Ania Ivory Ring Tower and the Lighthouse of the Night watched on with a detached point of view, and were even secretly pulling back their powers, preparing to move at any moment. For these deep-rooted Magus powers, the few decades that Leyland had given them previously was not particularly sufficient for them to move. just the search for an environment suitable for Magi to survive in outside of the South Coast was enough to give them a headache. Of course, no matter how unpredictable the changes in the South Coast would be, the dark and light Magi, and even other wandering Magi, did not dare to evoke the wrath of the Farlier family. It was a family that was sheltered by a morning star Magus. Krupp, who had been promoted to a rank 2 Warlock, was not someone to be belittled, much less Leyland, who might return at any moment. Besides, who knew if Sir Leyland had left some kind of trump card for his own family? Theoretically, as long as that Magus had bestowed a few of those transparent servants to the Farlier family, they could suppress the entire South Coast. Hence, the powers within the dark and light Magi had unanimously placed the Farlier family at the top of their lists of people they could not provoke. The entire Chernobyl Islands was even seen as out of bounds to all Magi. The Farlier family, along with the empire that they had established, grew stronger and more prosperous with the passing of time. A bright flame lit up in a pitch-black environment, bringing white light to its surroundings. Numerous more flames started to burn more and more vigorously, until they eventually formed an arched door. A masked figure stepped out from the arched door, his body immediately shrouded by a layer of dense black fog. "Disperse!" Following the voice coming from the figure, the rays of light and undulations immediately faded until they disappeared completely. "Secret technique, shadow stealth." The figure seemed to be at unease. A rune representing concealment and hiding suddenly flashed within the fog. Soon after, the entire cloud of fog shook and became completely transparent, blending in with the surroundings. Under the cover of the fog, the entire silhouette seemed to have penetrated into the shadows and the cracks, making its way through the ruins at lightning speed and avoiding a large number of warlocks from the Liar's family. Even a few of the Morning Star elders did not discover the silhouette's aura, allowing him to escape successfully. After he was far away from the Thunderbird Holy Land, the dense fog transformed into a black ray of light and streaked across the horizon like a meteor. It was only after fleeing for a few hours that the silhouette finally revealed himself. The man wore golden robes and had a black mask over his face. There was an air of elegance about him, giving him a sense of mystery. "It doesn't seem like I'll be tracked down here," Leyland exhaled gently. The preparations that the Liar's family had put in place to guard against him were not what he had expected. They weren't too strict, instead too relaxed. It makes sense anyway. With Eames' haughty temperament, he must have been certain that even if I could access the passage, I would still have to go through him to interact with the subterranean world, or even dump my goods and establish commercial trade here. Thus, he must have felt secure with the knowledge that he has the upper hand. What a pity that he had the wrong idea from the start. Leyland stroked his chin. Entering the subterranean world was a decision that he had made after careful deliberation. He needed the Purgatory world's coordinates to travel to it. There were far too many highly ranked Magi in the central continent, and Leyland could not be at ease at all. Furthermore, not only were the Twilight Zone and the South Coast both small in size, the density of elemental particles was too low. Initially, Leyland was prepared to find a random spot in the endless ocean to build the astral gate and attempt to search for the Purgatory world. But after seeing the Eternal Planes pocket dimension, he instantly saw a better alternative. What was different from the worlds above ground was that the first subterranean level was very covert. Even if Magi came chasing after Leyland specifically and followed his footsteps, they might not be able to discover this place. Besides, the rest of the subterranean world wasn't like the Twilight Zone from before. Even though it was the first level, the area of all the land added together was about the same as the entire central continent. If those Magi wanted to find Leyland here, it would be no different from finding a needle in a haystack. "Everything has been settled. What's left is the All-Snake curse." Leyland inhaled deeply, and his entire being transformed into a ray of light, then disappeared into the horizon. More than 10 days later, in a mountain range. This was a desolate mountain commonly seen underground. As it lacked plants and the radiance from a sunstone, the entire mountain was bare. Only a few fungi and vines that didn't require sunlight continued to grow sporadically. Vast quantities of black rocks and bare soil lay exposed outside the place. There weren't any large organisms on the entire mountain, and even the smaller darkness creatures were basically extinct. A few rooms had been opened up temporarily in the belly of this place. Remnants of clay made from mud and the radiance from everlasting spell effects were left on the walls. It was obvious that it hadn't been long since the work here was finished. Some of the rooms here had been remodeled into bedrooms and study rooms, while the one in the center had been transformed into a gigantic laboratory. A starry blue radiance illuminated the place, but was obstructed by the energy absorption rune on the wall. In the heart of the laboratory was a simple and unadorned door made of stone. Blue gems studded the door, just like stars. Leyland looked at the AI chip's report and the energy composition chart and couldn't help but exhale a deep breath. Phew! Finally done. I was running out of materials. In front of him was an astral gate which had undergone several transformations by the AI chip, one which Leyland had invested a great amount of his life and family possessions in. It was his hope of breaking through his bloodline shackles. Upon the thought of his bloodline shackles, Leyland's expression became somewhat gloomy. How much time do I have left? Leyland's voice seemed rather hoarse. Beep. According to the current condition of the host body, the countdown to the activation of the All-Snake Curse is 2 years, 4 months, 13 days, 8H55min43s. The AI chip projected a series of numbers. From the years to the seconds, the numbers were all arranged clearly, and the second counter was constantly adjusting itself, making Leyland's eyelids palpitate. I still have 2 years. Leyland stroked his chin and started to mutter irresolutely to himself. The All-Snake Curse was a curse belonging to the Snake Dowager, and was also the nightmare of all serpent warlocks. Apart from the Snake Dowager herself personally freeing the person, one could only rely on the help of a rank 9 being or break through the bloodline shackles oneself to escape it. But to Leyland, the Snake Dowager and rank 9 beings both represented a dead end. It was only through actually breaking the chains on his own bloodline that he could free himself from the All-Snake Curse and completely regain freedom. And the hope to smashing his bloodline shackles lay in the purgatory world. Hence, no matter how much danger the purgatory world contained, he had to go there. Remodeling the mask, the purgatory world. Light seemed to flash in Leyland's eyes. In the ancient times, it was an extremely famous and formidable world. Not only does it have the Snake Dowager, but there are also numerous existences of the same rank keeping watch there. Moreover, the purgatory world has not completely declined like the Magus world, as it still possesses the strength of ancient times. Forget the dangers of the place itself. Even finding the purgatory world's coordinates is already a considerably huge problem. Leyland rubbed his chin in thought. According to the information from the legacy left behind by the Ouroboros clan's ancestors, it is fundamentally possible to confirm that the purgatory world is located in the calm Jade constellation. However, the specific positioning is still a problem. The Snake Dowager's bloodline shackles were still present, and the Ouroboros clan's ancestors had never given up on exploring the astral plane. From the information and experience that they accumulated from generation to generation, and adding the AI chip's analysis and deduction, it was already possible to lock down the coordinates of the purgatory world to within one region. It was a pity that the calm Jade constellation was just too big. Finding the purgatory world in it was like finding Leyland's old Earth in the Milky Way. And what Leyland now wanted to do was to ascertain the position of that Earth within the galaxy's myriad of stars, planets, and other celestial bodies. Without having to be said, this was an extraordinarily tremendous undertaking. Even though Leyland had the AI chip's assistance, he also needed to wait for a very long time. But now, the Snake Dowager's curse evidently did not afford him that luxury. And even if the coordinates of the purgatory world have been found, this curse... Leyland couldn't help but reach up to his cheeks, feeling the icy sensation emitted by the mask of the dreamless. Although this mask had prevented him from being drawn into dreamscape, he constantly felt the ill intent from the dream world. This intention possessed tremendous cruelty, and there were constant attacks on the mask's defenses. It appeared like they were waiting for Leyland to relax, or the mask of the dreamless to shatter one day. The Snake Dowager is the master of the bloodline. I'm afraid her response towards my descendants will be incomparably cruel, not to mention the All-Snake Curse. Once I appear in the purgatory world, what if she realizes it? Won't I be delivering myself to her door? Leyland's face darkened. Despite how much her power had been suppressed in reaching out to the Magus world, she'd still managed to leave him with a fate worse than death as she'd pleased. If he entered the purgatory world, Consequently, before going to the purgatory world, it was absolutely necessary to have an effective method to conceal himself. AI chip. Establish mission, conceal my aura. Find a way to prevent discovery by the snake dowager, Leyland commanded. Beep. Mission established, beginning to collect data, establishing simulation. The AI chip's feedback was very prompt. The preparation needed to leave for the purgatory world is really too much. Leyland knitted his brows in vexation. I need to look for the world's coordinates, develop a concealment technique, and also find time for space concealment technology. I then need to hide myself and find a method to avoid piquing the interest of the world will, and then try to escape the Guardians. If it was a normal small-scale world, these inconveniences could be reduced a little, but the purgatory world that Leyland wanted to go to was a gigantic world. In the ancient era, it was second only to the Magus world and the astral world, and there existed many at or above rank 7 there. One misstep would mean death. Actually, even death would be a luxury, so Leyland absolutely couldn't afford to be careless. Simulation complete. Possibility of hiding from the snake dowager, 89.7%. The AI chip rapidly projected the results, putting a smile on Leyland's face. The probability is quite good. What do I need to do? Exporting program. The host needs to commence modification of spiritual force and soul force, and the mask of the dreamless must correspondingly be remodeled. The AI chip specifically laid out the steps one by one, forming a checklist that appeared in Leyland's consciousness. The AI chip has stored materials and the required techniques. All I need is time. Leyland stroked his chin. I don't have much time left. It is necessary to act as quickly as possible. Several months had passed in a flash. Leyland had remained inside the belly of the mountain in this period, sequestered from the outside world. With regards to Leyland, although the subterranean world's resources and enormous knowledge attracted him greatly, under the effect of the All-Snake curse, his priorities had been made clear. If he couldn't resolve the All-Snake curse and break through the bloodline shackles, then his path forwards would be completely cut off. This was a situation that Leyland absolutely could not endure. Thus, he put his utmost enthusiasm into his work, throwing himself into the preparations. I've worked hard for several months, but there's still 2 things left to do. Leyland looked at the black Petri dish in front of him, within which a lump of dark brown liquid was spreading continuously. The mix of corrosive water from the pool of lamentation and ground ancient bones. White powder was thrown into the Petri dish, making the dark brown liquid swell up at once. Weeping spirits who creep in the abyss, in the name of the nefarious filthbird, I summon the power of chaos. The ancient curse was cast, and amidst the bleak and mysterious words, the dark brown liquid suddenly transformed into a formless blue mass. Finished! A hint of joy emerged from Leyland's eyes, and he gritted his teeth with resolution in his face. Bang! He took off the mask of the dreamless, throwing it into the dark blue mass. Very quickly, an evil intent arrived from a distant world. It was as if he was falling, and by the time Leyland understood what was happening, he was already in a world of ice. White trees were everywhere, and the ceiling was dotted with shards of barb-like ice. A white python flicked its scarlet tongue at Leyland. Alabaster devil snake, we meet again. I thought you would be replaced by a 3-headed python this time. Leyland laughed in the ugly face of the alabaster devil snake, waves of dark red dream force appearing in his hands. I do not have much time. I am afraid I cannot play with you for too long. I need to dispose of you quickly. Dream force spell? Leyland's eyes flashed with a trace of blood red, and piercing rays of light were continuously released from his body. Misty light wrapped Leyland up along with the alabaster devil snake in a flash. Faint trembles spread to every corner of this dream world. Schlick! The enormous serpent roared with that sound, and the misty light withdrew to reveal the silhouette of the alabaster devil snake. Only there were many pure white scales scattered on the floor, and there was a fresh wound in the serpent's skull. Scarlet blood continuously flowed out, dyeing the white snow red. It was a terrible scene. How could I waste the blood of a rank 5 creature? Leyland lightly chuckled, and the blood floated up into the sky. It turned into crimson pearls that gathered in his palm, forming a ball of dark red. HSSS. At this moment, the body of an enormous snake faintly emerged outside this icy world. It only exuded a tiny breath, but even that filled Leyland with a sense of heavy oppression. That should be an existence at rank 6 at the least. With these endless reinforcements, I'm afraid even the strongest enemies will be dragged down completely. What a pity. Leyland bowed his body a little, as if he was leaving the field. He then called out to the alabaster devil snake and the existence outside. "Farewell, gentlemen." Boom. A gentle and pleasant light emerged, and Leyland's shadow disappeared into the light, leaving behind the useless roars of the two pythons. Beep. Set time has passed, beginning forceful awakening. When Leyland heard the cold, mechanical sound of the AI chip, it was more touching than any music. Phew! On the whole, there weren't any errors in my calculations. Leyland wiped his cold sweat. In reality, his actions today were certainly risky. Fortunately, the end result was not bad, and it seemed as if fate was on his side. A ball of dark red blood was floating in his hand, undulating with a frightening strength that was faintly mixed with dream force. This was the alabaster devil snake blood that Leyland had collected. Dreamscape was both illusory and real, and if this power of confusion could be used properly, it was more frightening than any spell. Rumble, rumble. White bubbles frothed around the mask of the dreamless in the Petri dish, and Leyland threw the ball of blood into it. Bang! A layer of demonic blood-red flames burnt up the surface of the mask of the dreamless. Accompanied by special undulations, traces of golden red patterns began to slowly appear on the mask. Once Dreamforce is intercepted, it'll take a while for it to dissipate. I need to take advantage of this moment. Leyland's eyes reddened as he used many complex alchemy techniques on the mask. The entire laboratory was lit up with brilliant lights and colors. At the last moment, the mask of the dreamless changed its appearance. It could still only cover half the face, but there were many fine lines on it now. On the surface of the mask were even strange patterns of red and gold. Beep. Mask of the Dreamless remodeling has been completed. The AI chip's voice rang out, and it even displayed the data of the redone mask. Magic item, Mask of the Dreamless, improved model, weight, 210G materials, Loc alloy, one-eyed snake fangs, alabaster devil snake blood. Effects. 1 can protect from the surveillance of Dreamscape, protect the true soul from suffering invasion from Dreamscape. 2 can release alabaster devil snake bloodline and soul force undulations and conceal the host's information. Success. Leyland placed the ice gold mask on his face, and with a single thought, he emitted the aura of the alabaster devil snake. The call of another world. I can still get past the common origin of our bloodline force to hide myself from the snake dowager like this. Leyland stroked his chin in thought. This was the solution the AI chip had suggested previously. Using the original bloodline's power, he could interfere with the snake dowager's probes. The rank 5 bloodline of the alabaster devil snake was clearly Leyland's best choice at present. The method to conceal myself has been resolved. Next is the issue of the coordinates. Leyland asked the AI chip, "How is the analysis of the ancient lightning runes going?" These were the runes that he had secretly scanned from the primordial magic robe worn by Eam, which had the frightening ability of amplification. Leyland was keenly aware that this kind of amplification ability could be applied to other things, and as a result had ordered the AI chip to continue analyzing it. Beep. Primordial magic robe analysis progress, 100%. 127,651 lightning runes have been recorded, 112,319 runes fully analyzed. Lightning amplification spell formation has been completed. Possible to effectively increase the power of lightning magic by 80 to 30%. The AI chip faithfully gave its analysis. So this is the result of the amplifying magic. After completely analyzing it, a tinge of regret colored Leyland's eyes. Such a pity. I'm not a Magus who specialized in lightning. Even if I demand such magi to give everything they own in exchange for this, they'll be willing. After analyzing and reconstructing it, the AI chip concluded that this lightning amplification spell formation wasn't just limited to Eam Lyre's booming thunderclap. Rather, it could be used to amplify all lightning magic. Having adapted it for that purpose, the value of these runes increased 1,000,000-fold. As for attracting those magi who specialized in lightning, it was a given. Even Leyland, who wasn't attuned to the lightning element, could exceed many lightning magi with the use of this formation. The result weren't bad. Allocate this information to the primary database, Leyland commanded. Also, how's the progress on improving it? Beep. Data has been recorded at the highest grade of confidentiality. New spell formation setup is at 87.99%, has been constructed using data from ancient amplification runes, Ofker techniques, high-grade spell formation theory. The AI chip projected the progress report directly into Leyland's consciousness. Already half done, the AI chip had used a multitude of resources, the information on ancient runes occupying first place. This was the task that Leyland had laid down from the beginning, even though the ancient runes could only be used to amplify the strength of lightning-type magi. But with further understanding by comparison, and adding the AI chip's huge database and deduction abilities, creating another type of spatial amplification rune was a very achievable matter. Leyland's brows relaxed somewhat, and he shortly asked, "Name the new model of spell formation, the Destiny spell formation." AI chip, simulate the extent of the Destiny spell formation's amplification ability. Beep. Mission established, investigating data. Not enough information on Destiny spell formation. Beginning simulation, experiment has started. A strange spell formation immediately appeared in front of Leyland, the upper part of the runes looking like delicate and twisting tadpoles full of the characteristics of ancient runes. It looked completely different from normal formations. Beep. Simulation test complete. Estimate. Destiny spell formation can amplify normal spells by around 50%, and for the effects of unique magical items, the amplification can increase to above 80%. Very good. Discarding the other amplifications, if it is focused only on unique magic items, is it possible for its power to increase further? If discarding all other amplification runes, the power of unique magical items will be amplified by over 100%. The complex operation was completed in a flash, and the AI chip immediately gave a reply. Very good, do it. As for unique magic items, just use this as a template. A great amount of soul force was sent out from Leyland's body, entering all the data from a magic item into the AI chip. Before the Destiny spell formation was thoroughly completed, such a modification was still very feasible. The reason why Leyland did not hesitate to face certain danger from stealing the ancient runes from Eam was largely for this purpose. It could be said that, after obtaining this amplification spell formation, the final weak point in Leyland's plans had been mended. Beep. Data has been imported, starting to modify the structure. Estimated completion time, 58 hours 32 minutes 41 seconds. The AI chip immediately reported. Very good. Two of the most important preparations are almost done. Next will be some other experiments and planning. Leyland touched the substantially modified mask of the Dreamless on his face, caught in the middle of a more intense experiment. Time unwittingly passed by. In the middle of the experiment room, the radiance of the gate to the astral plane became increasingly dazzling. The rays of light above the star gems seemed connected by invisible threads, emitting even more dazzling, brilliant rays. Bang. A doll-like puppet was caught by Leyland's hand, letting out a human-like giggle. The puppet clone has been completed. After the puppets had been put away, Leyland let out a relieved sigh. To make the trip to the purgatory world, he had done an extraordinary amount of preparations. However, there was not a lot of certainty. According to AI Chip's most optimistic calculations, even if there was this much preparation, his probability of succeeding of around 5% was already not bad. However, if he did not try and struggle, then it would absolutely fail, and as a result of this great probability, it was worth Leyland gambling on it. However, in light of Leyland's cautious personality, it was certain that before taking risks, all of the preparatory work would be done to the highest standard. Lucky spell formation and Mask of the Dreamless are both completed, as well as my clone puppet and so on. As for the remainder, finally there is only this. From within another instantaneously opened summoning chamber, the surrounding walls were covered with a huge amount of binding runes. It was a technique with the power to isolate dimensions. Every single rune was incomparably complex and precise, to the point where it could make a rank 1 Magus or rank 2 Magus immediately faint. In the very center of the summoning room was a black pentagram breathing out the terrifying power of evil which was continuously lingering, and from time to time it generated a flow of black air above the matrix. Crash. After a flash of light, Leyland received 2 white eggs of light. Ka-cha, ka-cha. Numerous cracks appeared on the eggs of light, and they finally broke open, exposing 2 stony imprints. One by one, the evil runes above twisted, full of strange feelings, so much that even the center of the pentagram was attracted. The black stream of air above intensified, and even let out a terrible whining sound. Gluttony imprint. Leyland's eyes flashed a glimmer of light. These 2 runes were impressively from when he first gathered the leftover fragments of the gluttony monarch Beelzebub's doppelganger. From his senior Robin, and from the quicksand tomb, Leyland had in total obtained 2 pieces of these imprints. Every piece contained a mysterious will and evil power. Although it could help a Magus break through the Morning Star boundary, yet it could cause the Magus himself to be contaminated by the Gluttony King, and finally become Beelzebub's doppelganger. Beep. Binding the entire open matrix, starting isolation of dimension energy technique. The AI chip's voice sounded at this moment, and even though it was a matchless machine, it made Leyland feel nervous. Go! 2 pieces of the stony imprint suddenly flew, without entering the pentagram array. Bang! Dark black light suddenly skyrocketed, finally taking shape as an enormous portal. The keen soul power of the half-moon made Leyland tense up. He could clearly feel a deeply terrifying will. Attracted by the array and runes, it descended. Lord Beelzebub, you are the ruler of gluttony. And the god of all demons. The original power of gluttony will forever linger on in your domain, becoming the most shining star on your crown. Like a ballad, and like the sound of a funeral march, suddenly the entire summoning room was full of sound. Although it was in an unknown language, Leyland could still completely understand the meaning. This is some sort of language of ancient laws, and similar to the ancient Byron language, it is the language of laws. As long as the soul power reaches a certain level, it is possible to naturally understand. Leyland's expression was solemn and respectful, commanding the AI chip to record this unknown language of laws. Mortal, we meet again. Thou dare to take the initiative to call me. It makes me respect your boldness. Illusory black flames suddenly formed into a tall shadow. It was naturally a growing 12 pairs of wings, with horns on its head and multiple pairs of eyes demon, otherwise known as the devil. The power of evil dispelled continuously from Beelzebub's every pore, and from somewhere suddenly came the power of a law. Gluttony! The law of gluttony. Leyland's eyes radiated light. Beelzebub was clearly in existence from an unknown dimension or world's rank 7 laws, and had already completely understood one type of law. Even though it was only a doppelganger arriving, this type of level was able to be clearly expressed. Yes, you are the sovereign king of gluttony. The ruler of existence, but what of it? This is the Magus world, the most powerful world, so how much have you been suppressed? And besides, in this summoning room I have arranged binding runes. At the very least it can block 50% of your power from passing through. This is only your doppelganger. How much strength do you have left? In fact, I admire you as well. Fully aware that this was a trap, you still dared to come. Following Leyland's words, blood-red light burst forth from the summoning room's 4 walls. Ready to go, the demonic wings on the back of Beelzebub spread out, and wings of bone wrapped by a black membranous film collided with the wall. It let out a piercing light of thunderous lightning, followed by an immense amount of blood-red and white smoke. Leyland's facial expression turned completely gloomy. Soon after, Beelzebub's many compound eyes let out a strange light. How can a mortal know the thoughts of a god? The gods. Leyland was surprised, but assumed a sneering expression. In my view, you are just prey, just this and nothing more. And so, sovereign king of gluttony Beelzebub, until we meet again. Leyland placed his hand on his chest and executed a graceful aristocratic bow with irreproachable form. However, with this motion, the entire room was quickly swallowed up by bloody lightning. Rank 5 Emperor Serpent innate skill devour. His body shrunk by several times, but the shadow of a Chemian Serpent Emperor appeared solidly behind Leyland's back. Although it was still constrained by thorny chains, it did not reveal any trace of fatigue, and instead, a frightening black hole materialized in front of Leyland. Ka-cha! Ka-cha! Piercing lightning struck without pause, tearing apart the flesh on Beelzebub's body. Gigantic chunks of flesh entered the black hole without stopping, and finally became a terrifying blood-red life energy. Leyland's face flushed a little, but he did not completely absorb the energy, instead using his innate skill devour to continuously purify Beelzebub's energy essence, until it finally became a small bottle's worth of red liquid. Mortal, vile Magus, I will not let you go. I vow this in my name, in the name of Beelzebub. In the prison of bloody lightning, Beelzebub's voice and struggling became smaller and smaller, and finally faded away. When Beelzebub had completely disappeared, the entire pentagram star array and powerful runes on the surrounding walls had collapsed in an instant. There were even a lot of bite marks left, as if some terrifying creature had devastated the area. The existence of this type of law, even though it was only a doppelganger, it was still not easy to handle. However, Leyland resided in the Magus world and could borrow the entire word's strength to suppress Beelzebub, so he firmly held the advantage. Through the array and binding runes, Beelzebub's strength was continuously suppressed, and finally it had become an excessively weak clone. In the original history of the Central Continent, Beelzebub had several clones wreaking havoc. Finally, he was suppressed, but his body had been splintered into fragments, leaving behind these gluttony imprints. And so Leyland's current power was still on the strong side, even in the ancient times. Consequently, handling a weakened clone was not an issue at all. When Beelzebub's voice had entirely disappeared from the secret cell, and even the laws of gluttony had completely vanished, only then did Leyland stroke his chin, with a trace of a smile on his lips. A god? This statement is quite interesting. Having vaguely guessed Beelzebub's origin, Leyland did not take his warning and curses to heart, but instead looked at the dark red liquid in his hand. The extremely dense dark red pus seemed to have the tendency to crystallize, and its evil aura continuously lingered around the area of the test tube, which seemed very terrifying. Beep, unknown body of energy, high purity, contains the intense power of laws, rich in corrosive energy, not recommended for use by the host. The AI chip scanned the substance and immediately gave its feedback. As expected, even after purification and being stripped by the innate skill devourer, this type of energy from the clone contained the original Beelzebub's genes and energy particles information. Leyland stroked his chin in thought. With the existence of the laws above, it was already possible to brand his own imprint on his soul, flesh, and even his energy, as well as anything else. Even this projected clone contained Beelzebub's imprint, just like with the icy world's female bronze giant. Even if there was only one drop of blood, after traversing worlds, it was still possible to open the spirit and rebirth into a new life. If Leyland were to use this type of energy essence, although he would gain huge advantages in a short space of time, and even understand the laws of gluttony, in the end he was certain that he would resemble history's many magi, such as Robin. Leyland was fully aware of this corrupt practice, and of course would not be that reckless. Layer upon layer of sealing techniques appeared, revolving around the sides of the test tube. It sealed the power of the original dark red energy, and only after completing this was Leyland able to put the test tube away with relief. The final step of the preparations has been completed. After finishing everything, Leyland did not immediately attempt his last-ditch effort, but on the contrary, he returned to his bedroom and slept very well. A sleep without meditation, without calculations, and without any burdens, relaxed Leyland's body and mind greatly. Soon after, he found a quiet room and slowly began to recall his memories. From the beginning of his birth in his previous world, growth, and after his final antimatter experiment failed and his passing, and from the Chernobyl Islands to his apprenticeship at the Abyssal Bone Forest Academy, Teljos City, Extreme Night City, and the Central Continent. One by one, the fresh memories continuously emerged, along with the many people, friends, and enemies. Through slowly combing through these memories, Leyland felt that the half-moon-ranked true soul within his point mass had become even more pure and thorough, tending towards the change into the full moon rank. This type of calm reflection continued for 5 or 6 days. Leyland's aura became weaker and weaker, and finally he resembled an ordinary person, with only the radiance in his eyes becoming more bright like the stars, and finally slowly and softly lessened, becoming like an ancient well without a single ripple. His innermost heart was peaceful and quiet, impervious to desires. Until the last moment, Leyland's heart no longer had any nervousness or confusion, only the determination to dauntlessly move forwards. He stood up suddenly and went into the Star Realm laboratory. The simple astral gate radiated a piercing light with a glittering blue flame forming a round arched door. Just like a silver-colored spatial mirror, at its core was a complicated black vortex, and opposite was a brilliant galaxy, leading to unknown places. Beside the astral gate, there was a huge and complicated spell formation, and above it every rune was incomparably precise, minute and full of a sense of beauty. Over 10,000 of the runes seemed to swim like tadpoles, continuously sending out mysterious undulations. At the core of this formation, there was a round groove, and what it was used for was unknown. Beep. The lucky spell formation arrangement has been completed. Estimated amplification power, 107.6%. The AI chip's feedback was promptly transmitted. Leyland had created this amplification spell formation, according to the amplification techniques from ancient runes, and with the AI chip's terrifying deduction and simulation ability. Due to discarding its universality and specially targeting a magical items effect, it was amplified to over 100%. As far as Leyland was concerned, this could be considered an unexpected joy. Let's begin. Leyland's eyes had a resolute appearance. Once you fly, you soar. Success involved completely breaking free of his bloodline shackles, an unexpected and frightening result. Beep. Astral Gate has been opened, searching coordinate database. Along with the AI chip's voice, the brilliant river of light within the silver mirror drew constantly closer, until a star resembling a vortex appeared, and the screen's depiction ended there. This was the calm Jade constellation, the location of the purgatory world. With the predecessor's data, and adding the AI chip's continuous deduction, it could only progress to this step. Within the calm Jade constellation were tens of thousands of worlds, along with many half-planets, different dimensions, and broken spaces. Their numbers were as vast as the numbers of stars in the sky. To find the location of the purgatory world from so many possible coordinates was tantamount to fishing a needle from the sea. Although Leyland had the AI chip, he still needed a lot of time to do this. And what he lacked now, unfortunately, was time. At this step, the role of the AI chip and information has already been exhausted. I can only slowly search and rely on luck. Leyland seemingly sighed, and with a flash of golden light, a simple gold coin appeared in his hand. This shape of the gold coin was very simple, and it was surrounded by a circle of dark golden light. One side of the coin had a skull on it, the other side the pattern of a lucky bird. The gold coin currently had several cracks, and it almost split the coin apart. This was the unique magic item Lucky Coin. It was Leyland's greatest gain from extreme Night City. Holding it was just like grasping a thread of the power of destiny. Even in the field of star realm experimentation, the power of destiny could exert a terrifying might. Leyland was initially able to find the Black Rain world, obtaining multi-limb strength, thanks to the power of destiny. From that time onwards, Leyland had completely sealed the lucky coin and had not even used it despite several crises, preparing to get the most use out of it. And now, it was time to use the coin. Go. A golden arc flashed from Leyland's hands. The lucky coin streaked across space in a shining trajectory, into the groove in the center of the lucky spell formation seamlessly, as if they were originally one. BZZ. A great deal of light twinkled, threads of golden power were released from the spell formation, following the ritual into the lucky coin, making the coin's dark golden light become even more dazzling. Due to the material constraints of the lucky coin, it is only possible to make predictions up to the morning star level, but once it touches upon powers beyond morning stars, it will meet with a horrible backlash. Leyland watched the dark golden light of the lucky coin intensify, a peculiar expression flashing in his eyes. Breakthrough and success. I will first use the Destiny spell formation to amplify the power of Destiny's coin, and then draw out the power of fate from the coin all at once. I had previously narrowed down the location of the purgatory world in the vast astral realm to the calm Jade constellation already. Staking everything on the destruction of Destiny's coin, the attempt this time it has a 70% chance of success. A blazing light shone from Leyland's eyes, and he held up his hands. The power of destiny, please guide my way and lead me to the purgatory world. Bang. At the moment of Leyland's chant, the radiance of Destiny's coin was at its highest point. The entire laboratory was wrapped up in the dazzling dark golden light. The power of destiny reached its peak at this moment. At this moment, all of the astrologers in the entire Magus world raised their heads in amazement, sensing that the undulations of the river of destiny was shifting. Threads of dark golden light continuously touched the door to the star realm. The image of the calm Jade constellation grew ever smaller on the surface of the silver mirror, moving slowly towards the location of the purgatory world. Ka-cha! Ka-cha! The purgatory world, however, was the world where the laws of the snake dowager existed. Even though it had merely calculated the coordinates, fine cracks constantly appeared on the surface of Destiny's coin. Warning, warning, Destiny's coin is rapidly destroying itself. Countdown, 0.9. The AI chip quickly produced a blood-red countdown frame. At this time, although he was continuously drawing closer to his goal, the purgatory world had not yet appeared. Ah! It's not enough, it's still not enough. Leyland's face flushed red and he suddenly commanded, AI chip, commence the overload of the Destiny spell formation. Beep, further amplifying the Destiny spell formation, currently overloading at 200%, 300, 400. Along with the AI chip's voice, the energy stack around the Destiny spell formation immediately let out an ear-piercing explosion. The terrifying power of amplification emerged once again. Crackle. A vast amount of energy unceasingly flowed about in all directions. Many runes even exploded, and the entire Destiny spell formation collapsed in a flash. Just before the spell formation collapsed, the frightening power of amplification had appeared on the surface of Destiny's coin. Bang! First, the skull which represented misfortune on one side of the coin exploded. Shortly after, the Destiny bird seemed to come alive, unfolding its wings and letting out a resounding cry. Destiny's coin suddenly exploded into fragments. At this time, a ray of dark golden light slashed open the display of the calm jade constellation as if it was a sharp sword. This caused the astral gate to show the edge of a dull-colored star on its surface. Beep. The Destiny spell formation and Destiny's coin have been destroyed. Discovered the purgatory world's coordinates. The AI chip's voice sounded out and made a cheerful expression appear on Leyland's face. Success! The wish of all Chemian warlocks. There's even a method to resolve the bloodline shackles. Leyland resolutely clenched his fist. Beep. The purgatory world's coordinates have been targeted, initiating the opening of the space portal. Accompanying the sound of the AI chip, a blue gate of light opened up before Leyland with a loud rumble. A frightening feeling was transmitted from the gate, giving Leyland a sense of formidable oppression. The purgatory world. It was a very formidable world in ancient times. Until now, it had never declined, and it even contained the violent existence of the snake dowager and other powerful laws. Taking this step, there is no possibility of turning back. Leyland smiled softly and stepped entirely into the radiant light. Bang! The blue rays of light exploded with a flash, wrapping up the entire laboratory and bringing it along. A blue ray of light, like a meteor, streaked across the vast star realm. In this blue light was Leyland, looking at the dull star which was growing larger and larger in his field of view. It finally transformed into an enormous world. This world was shrouded entirely in a dense gray fog, and he couldn't see clearly. He could only see pieces of the continents and the ocean with great difficulty. Any of these continents could be comparable to the size of the central continent of the Magus world. The faint atmosphere of great power was emanated, making Leyland shiver a little. Rapidly, the power of the astral gate brought him to the border of the purgatory world, which was outside of the world boundary. However, when Leyland wanted to enter the purgatory world, there was a sudden change. Who is it? Where has this outsider come from, who dares to offend my majesty? A frightening amount of energy undulated outside the purgatory world and took shape. An enormous shadow appeared, and even the storms and turbulences of space all avoided it. There was a strong and overbearing atmosphere. The power of laws constantly undulated from the shadow's body. This shadow possessed very large and deformed wings. Its entire body was as huge as a mountain. A giant skeletal hand reached out towards Leyland and grabbed him, as if it was a giant snatching a fly. There are rank 7 and above laws here. Damn it! There are obviously many strong people, but they are unexpectedly vigilant against outsiders. Leyland's expression changed, and soon after the golden red patterns on the dreamless mask continuously flashed with light. The bloodline of the alabaster devil snake from earlier was released. This is the bloodline of the alabaster devil snake. Although it was once the master of the shadow world, now it is part of our purgatory world. Accompanied by the voice of another woman, an enormous eye with vertically slit pupils appeared. A profound intent was issued from the giant eye above. Soon after, a great amount of black lightning engulfed the giant eye and struck the enormous hand which had grabbed Leyland. Apologies. Complying with the contract is the foundation of order. In accordance with the contract we had previously signed together, the bloodline of the Snake Dowager has the right to enter the purgatory world. Within the mass of black lightning, the enormous skeletal hand shattered to pieces, which made the shadow let out an infuriated roar in response. Damn you, Trial's Eye. I won't let you off one day. Chirp, chirp. Just when Leyland had let out a sigh of relief, accompanied by a cheerful chirp, an enormous gray bird flew emerged from the purgatory world. All who belong to the trial of the contract are the enemies of this bird. The giant wings of the bird seemed to shield the whole world from Leyland's view. SSS. At this moment, an even more violent thought was projected over, making Leyland feel that he was surrounded by a pack of wolves. The phantom of a ball of snakes as large as a star was forced out from the void. Many giant snakes roared directly towards Leyland. An indistinct figure appeared from within the coiled snakes. With one look, Leyland's bloodline nearly rose in rebellion. Snake Dowager, although it is only a phantom. Leyland's pupils constricted. Oh. It looks like this descendant appears to be quite interesting. Even the Snake Dowager is in a hurry to get her hands on him. The bird bantered ridiculously, as if it was a person. In that case, it fanned its huge gray wings and the obstacles in front of Leyland disappeared. A terrifyingly powerful space storm followed this, which rapidly increased its speed. In a moment, it had crashed through the world boundary. Bird, you dare! A rather angry voice came from behind Leyland's back, along with the monstrous hissing of the gigantic snake. It seemed as if many stars behind him had all exploded, and all of the terrifying energy contained within made the whole space begin to faintly tremble. The gigantic purgatory world silently endured the aftermath, showing off the foundation of a truly powerful world. The beings that appeared earlier should only be merely conscients and clones, and unexpectedly they were this terrifying. There was a trace of bitterness in the corner of Leyland's mouth, and also the sense of being very fortunate. The process of crossing the world boundary was viewed by the unusually sensitive rank 7 existences in the purgatory world as if bandits had conspicuously trespassed into their own home. It was impossible to not be discovered. Fortunately, although the rank 7 laws overseeing the purgatory world were not little, they seemed to be full of contradictions with each other, which finally gave Leyland a precious chance to take advantage of them. Descendant of my blood, return to my embrace. At this moment, an enormous will swept across Leyland and made his mind tremble. Entering the purgatory world and smoothly blending in was instead easy to handle. The stone outside is very dazzling, but if I fell into the river above, to resolve it again, it would not be such an easy matter. And, forcibly suppressing the rebellion of his bloodline, a puppet suddenly appeared from Leyland's hands. Ha ha! The puppet laughed sweetly, and it continuously undulated a soul force and bloodline power which was extremely similar to Leyland's. Go! With Leyland's voice, the puppet clone floated in midair, and moving to and fro like a meteor, took a different direction from Leyland. I hope that the puppet will win me enough time. And also, beep, the dreamless mask is activating, concealing the bloodline for the second time. Accompanying the AI chip's voice was a layer of fine white snake scales, suddenly appearing from the surface of the dreamless mask. Mixing with the bloodline aura from earlier, the undulations exclusive to the alabaster devil snake concealed Leyland's soul force and bloodline power in a flash. In the purgatory world, the clan of snakes that the Snake Dowager is in is also an enormous species. Even the other side surely cannot thoroughly distinguish between every alabaster devil snake. Beep, collecting the laws of the purgatory world, initiating adjustment of host undulations. With the AI chip's voice, many laws of the purgatory world were collected to be analyzed, and slowly altered the undulations coming from Leyland. Very quickly, Leyland's entire self resembled the natives of the purgatory world, and no longer had the incompatible feeling of an outsider from another world. Everything has been completed. Leyland breathed a sigh of relief, his face shortly flushing red. The confrontation of the different laws just a moment ago had left him with a not inconsiderable injury. All that could be done has been done, and next, it depends on luck. Leyland was just like a fallen meteorite, and now, the enormous wills following on his heels had completely lost his presence. Drifting and analysis, a flaming star shot down from the skies, smashing into the waters with a huge splash. Ugh! The icy cold water immediately left Leyland clear-minded, and a salty taste attacked his senses. This is an ocean. His mind was quickly reinvigorated. Those existences above rank 6 saw me, but I was lucky enough to get through the barrier into the world. I even had to let my substitute clone leave. In that case, this is the purgatory world. Seeing the dark luster in the horizon as well as the chaotic will unique to purgatory, Leyland's lips quirked up in a broadening smile. Ha! I've succeeded. Leyland had finally taken the first step on his path to breaking the bloodline shackles. The elation in his expression grew more and more pronounced. As a foreign entity, Leyland would obviously affect the world barrier while traversing into the purgatory world. Those existences above rank 6 had sensed this. Hence, Leyland wasn't surprised that so many conscients were present there, even making some preparations. However, the events had far exceeded his expectations. Not only were there more beings in the purgatory world than he'd expected that comprehended laws, they weren't all in the same camp. He'd even noticed a few familiar faces. It's not just the Snake Dowager, but the Trial's Eye and the nefarious Filthbird are here too. I wonder if it's their main body here, or just a clone. Leyland floated on the surface of the sea and was pushed along with the waves. With the checks by the AI chip, his injuries were slowly recovering, and he would soon regain his ability to move. Floating on the ocean was very dangerous and could attract bloodthirsty sharks or other high-energy beings. However, Leyland had no aura undulations at all and was like a block of wood. He wasn't bothered by anything at all. While recovering, his thoughts were still moving quickly. Trial's Eye and the nefarious Filthbird. They're a group of old mortal enemies, and I never thought I'd see their true bodies. Even if they're clones, they probably possess about half the strength of their main bodies. The ancient Trial's Eye was commonly used by magi to make contracts. As an arbitrator and protector, it spread its might across multiple worlds. This extended to even breaking dawn monarchs and all the way down to acolytes. While making contracts, Trial's Eye could be summoned to bear witness. Of course, the Trial's Eye that different magi summoned were fundamentally different. However, in Leyland's point of view, Trial's Eye was not doing all of this for nothing. Through safeguarding these contracts and judging those who violated them, it did gain immense benefits too. The laws it comprehended could very possibly be contract and trial or something to that effect. Hence, through these activities, it not only amassed more comprehension towards the rules, but could even obtain the attention of the world origin force to increase its strength. On the contrary, the nefarious Filthbird likely comprehended something like betrayal and chaos. Hence, the two of them became arch-enemies and engaged in battles that spanned across several worlds. Now, Leyland had found the projections of their conscience in Purgatory World. This meant that a very capable clone or even real body of these two beings were now in Purgatory World. What kind of secrets were being kept in the ancient Purgatory World? It's not just the Snake Dowager, but also Trial's Eye and the nefarious Filthbird, amongst other beings, that have set their sights on this place. Leyland pondered silently over the effects the appearance of the Trial's Eye and nefarious Filthbird would bring to his plans, and whether they would be able to help him. Based on what I saw, the Trial's Eye seems to be a protector of laws, which was why it helped me out and let me off leniently after seeing I was a descendant of the Snake Dowager. The nefarious Filthbird was clearly opposed to the Eye, and after seeing that the Snake Dowager had not protected me and even wanted to kill me quickly, changed its initial plans and sent me into Purgatory World. Leyland's eyes flickered with wit as he analyzed the scene multiple times. If I really had to divide them, Trial's Eye is probably on the Snake Dowager's side. Of course, I can't rule out the fact that it was just following the contract. The nefarious Filthbird obviously thinks nothing of the Snake Dowager. There's hatred on both ends. As for that strange beast with destroyed wings that appeared at the beginning, it's probably sitting on the fence. Of course, this could be misleading. However, these beings are very arrogant. It's too unlikely that they'd team up to cheat a mere rank 5 warlock like me, and the possibility is almost negligible. But it's not bad to be on my guard against it. Leyland felt himself getting a headache. Having to deduce so many secrets regarding these beings as a mortal human himself made him feel like his brain just wasn't doing enough. AI Chip, how's the analysis of the surroundings and world law? Leyland shut his eyes and let his body drift along the waves and communicated with the AI chip inwardly. Beep. Scanning of surroundings completed. Constructing elemental diagram. The AI chip quickly projected the image of an elemental composition diagram. The water elemental particles are very dense, which is understandable since this is like an ocean. On top of that, there's darkness and fire-type elemental particles, as expected of purgatory. Leyland read through the analysis of the surroundings and couldn't help but nod. The concentration of elements around was slightly lacking compared to the central continent, but they were almost on the same level. That really made it worthy of being called an ancient, powerful world. Beep. Deduction of host's location complete. The AI chip projected a map in front of Leyland. This was a scene of purgatory world that he had seen from outside the barrier. Within was a hazy continent and gigantic ocean, and on the image, Leyland was situated near to a continent in the ocean. He was represented as a dazzling red dot. Though I know my approximate location in purgatory world, I don't know which continent to go to. Leyland laughed wryly. The map the AI chip had used was everything he had seen before, and it was much too simple. Considering the startling area of purgatory world, any mistakes here would reach a terrifying extent. AI chip, check my stats. Not bothering with these longer, Leyland commanded again. Beep. Mission established, beginning scan, collecting host stats. The AI chip quickly intoned the results. Leyland Farlier, rank 5 Warlock. Bloodline, giant chem-in serpent, complete form. Strength, 32, 76, agility, 35, 62, vitality, 59, 176.9, spiritual force, 875, 2003.5, magic power, 875, magic power is in synchronization with spiritual force. Soul force, 88, 200, half moon. Though it was just a confrontation between a few tremendous conscients, Leyland had been caught in the crossfire and almost died. The terror of rank 7s and above were something he couldn't stand up to as he was now. Due to the curse mark of 10,000 snakes, my stats keep dropping. On top of that, I'm grievously injured. If I still had my vitality from before, I'd probably be able to recover in a few hours. It looks like I'll need around 2 days. Leyland observed the beautiful starry sky and sighed slowly. Meanwhile, he could feel that his body was like a sponge, with the darkness-type elemental particles in the air and even moonlight being absorbed into his cells, restoring his life force. This, chem-in serpent's devouring ability, or a natural occurrence in the purgatory world. Whatever it was, Leyland was rather stunned at this discovery. Purgatory world truly was most suitable for the Snake Dowager and her clansmen. If not for that damned purgatory chaotic intent that resulted in a bloodline illness, it could even be comparable to the shadow world before. Beep. World law analysis at 2.16%. Determined to be not letting foreign creatures and souls have too drastic reactions. At this moment, the AI chip's newly investigated conclusion was placed in front of him. In other words, the purgatory world has nothing against the entrance of the powerful. It's no wonder the Snake Dowager, Trial's Eye, and the rest chose to come here. Leyland suddenly understood. Most worlds, latent wills were very opposed to foreigners. All those who entered would feel a terrifying malicious intent. Even their bodies would be suppressed by the world force and cause them to drop in rank. A situation like that would be very obvious in the Magus world or world of gods. However, Purgatory world seemed rather exotic as well. It accepted all foreigners, and its degree of openness was second only to the dreamscape. When he had just entered, Leyland had not felt any pressure whatsoever from the world will. After he completely adjusted the frequency of his aura and soul undulations to the purgatory world, he was more like a native. There was no longer the feeling of being pressured and spied on by some malicious intent. What a mystical world. However, the will of purgatory world was initially already very chaotic. That's normal, Leyland nodded. For world wills, all from outside were locusts that would even take over their precious origin source. Hence, they were very against this. Some worlds even had their natives in chains, and then expelled them after their strength went past a certain level. Only purgatory world with chaotic intent like this could tolerate the existence of foreigners like the Snake Dowager. Even then, perhaps the Snake Dowager wouldn't brazenly absorb the world origin. If not, no matter how chaotic the will of the purgatory world is, there would be a powerful opposing force. That might be my chance. gigantic ship, and merfolk Leyland never forgot his primary goal. He had to break through his bloodline shackles and rid himself of the all-snake curse. Sneaking into Purgatory World and lying low was the first step to success. While he still didn't have a concrete plan for what happened later, he needed to keep adjusting and then adapting it anyway. Now that I've gotten into Purgatory World and have the help of the AI chip, my aura and undulations are now adjusting so that it's more similar to natives. With the bloodline concealing by the mask of the dreamless as well as my wooden puppet used as a target amidst the chaos, the snake dowager shouldn't be able to find signs of me in a short period of time, no matter how powerful she is. Unless she's reached rank 9, where there's nothing she doesn't know or cannot do. Rank 9 was the highest realm for all magi. It was said to be where one grasped truth, and there was nothing they could not do or did not know. In Leyland's eyes, this surpassed the power of gods. However, that was what had been described in ancient volumes. Who knew whether this narration was real or fake? Even during the most splendid ancient era in the Magus world, the records of the most powerful Magus had only reached rank 8. Real great rank 9 magi had never appeared before. Perhaps rank 9 was just a fantasy for a highest rank. Leyland was certain that the snake dowager was at most comparable to a rank 8 Magus. It was impossible for her to have reached rank 9. Purgatory World was vast and boundless, and also had many rank 7s and above in charge. It was possible that even the snake dowager would have to search for him continent by continent. Hence, based on Leyland's deductions, she would probably trace back to him on the sly using his bloodline or order his capture. The most stable and possible method she would use would be waiting patiently, because Leyland could not break through the bloodline shackles without any contact with her. In this short period of time, it was impossible for Leyland to rank up several times such that he could be on the same level as the snake dowager. The priority right now is to blend into Purgatory World, find the natives and understand how the organizations are divided. Leyland pondered over this silently and then closed his eyes. Under the moonlight, there seemed to be a layer of vague luster passing over his body and emitting sparkling rays within the ocean. Night passed, and orange rays rose from sea level, the reflection gleaming atop the waves. At the end of the reddish-orange rays of light was a dark red sun. Dim golden light spilled down, and the surrounding white fog gradually dissipated. Leyland, who was lying on the surface of the water while recuperating, flexed his fingers. In this situation where he could only rely on the natural ability of his body to heal, he was bored out of his mind and shifted his attention to other things. The outline of the sun in Purgatory World seems much smaller than in the Magus world. Based on my deductions last night, the nights here are at least 20 hours long, and based on the speed at which this star is rising. Leyland watched the first glimmer of dawn that had now entirely left sea level, and his mind began to calculate things quickly. Though incomparable to the AI chip, through advancements and nourishments through his spiritual and soul force, the ability and speed of his brain when it came to calculating things did not lose out to the top minds in his previous world. 4 hours and 15 minutes. It might be even shorter than that, but that's the time for this sun to complete a whole cycle of ascending and descending. Leyland was very confident in his calculation skills. Purgatory World isn't like a planet. This only has a boundless land and sea that are of almost the same volume. That's why whether it's sunrise or sundown, it's uniform no matter where I am. The day is so short, which makes sense why darkness elemental particles are so ample. Beings lacking in sunlight and energy have no choice but to focus on other sources. That's probably why the fire elements are used extensively. Leyland was able to see through how Purgatory World had generally changed over time. This ability to see things long-term was the result of his scientific research in his previous world and abilities in magic in this life. This perhaps even exceeded the abilities of many rank 7s. The amount of daylight in Purgatory World is rather low compared to many worlds. Only Shadow World that has never had sunlight can probably top it. It's no wonder that after the Snake Dowager failed to get control over the Shadow World, she led her people and migrated here, which is quite suitable if one were to disregard the chaotic intent here. Leyland's lips quirked in a slight smile. The chaotic intent of Purgatory World has its pros and cons. It's precisely because of its chaotic nature that the Snake Dowager could take advantage of a loophole. However, her descendants aren't at rank 7 and can't resist the invasion of chaotic intent. That's what resulted in the bloodline hysteria in them. That can only be completely healed with the world origin force of the icy world. Perhaps I'll be able to find powerful natives of Purgatory World to help me in my plans. Leyland's eyes flashed with intelligence. Yo. At this moment, a few snow-white seagull-like creatures that were 10 times larger than their counterparts flew in the air. The giant birds soaring caught Leyland's attention. This is... Leyland's pupils shrank slightly. Beep. Found traces of a large ship. Based on course, possibility of encountering host is 99.999%. Discovered abnormal heat energy and radiation undulations, determined to be existence of exemplary strength. The AI chip loyally intoned. It's been about only 2 days, and I managed to bump into a native already. I'm in such a vast ocean, which means I have pretty good luck. Leyland turned slightly. Is it because the place where I landed is close to some continent? In the direction in which Leyland had turned where the water met the sky, a tiny black speck appeared and then increased in size, sailing over like a little mountain. Yo. The gigantic birds flying overhead in circles chirped intensely, so excited as if they had found their relatives. Someone's pets. Seems like I was discovered long ago. Leyland's injuries had yet to completely heal, and he could only do very slight movements. For this reason, he was still lying here. A tremendous black figure that covered the skies finally revealed itself. This was a huge group of ships, and there were 3 with large white sails like canopies and a hull tens of meters high. At the moment that the ships arrived, the skies above Leyland were completely hidden and created great shadows. Beep. Detected life force undulations from large creatures. Position, 1200 m below host's location. The AI chip's voice sounded at this moment. 2 large eyes that were like searchlights in the deep sea suddenly brightened from the black depths of the water underneath him. It must be some creature like the giant dragon whale in the south coast. Looks like the main driving force of these ships is obtained by subduing creatures, Leyland decided. When they were much closer to Leyland, a cry of alarm sounded from atop the deck. Great eyesight allowed Leyland to see a few heads that seemed to belong to humans from above the deck, yelling at him. The ship parted the water into waves, and Leyland's body began to move again. Finding that shouting was pointless, the sound of a bugle horn could be heard from above the deck. The sound that was low and held a hint of fragility was made from maybe a cow horn or conch. Along with the sounds of the bugle horn, Leyland could sense even more life undulations appearing from deep in the sea and arriving around him. Merman, the marine tribe. Leyland watched the beings surrounding him, shock evident in his eyes. Those who had been attracted by the sounds were a group of merfolk with the upper body being a human and lower, a large tail. There were shells, corals, algae, and all type of decorations on their bodies. They looked very similar to a branch of the marine tribe in the south coast, but there were still some differences. Eskean Gaklung. There were scales on their faces and the parotid gland unique to fishes at their cheeks. In their hands were harpoons and other weapons. One of them with the best physique and that was situated closest to Leyland made a sound. It's similar to the Byron language, but it's still different. Leyland had already gotten used to the inability to communicate from the usage of different languages. Thankfully, with the recuperation in this period of time, I can use part of my soul force. Clear and cool soul force spread from within his eyes and then quickly flitted across all the merfolk, and especially the leader. Leyland's half-moon rank soul force invaded his sea of consciousness without his knowledge, and he obtained large amounts of spiritual force undulations. The AI chip worked quickly and tidied up a new language, inputting it into Leyland's memories. Looks like I'll need to invent a spell that allows me to be proficient in all languages. If not, it's going to be very troublesome every time. Meanwhile, seeing that Leyland had not replied after a long while, the leading merman asked, "Who are you? Why are you here?" Though they'd seen many people caught in danger from the ocean, there were truly very few who were like Leyland, floating on the surface of the water. The atmosphere was stifling, and a few surrounding merfolk grasped the forks in their hands tightly. "Oh, my apologies. I was just too emotional just now." Leyland finally spoke, using the same language as them. His gentle voice seemed to hold some strange ability that caused all the merfolk to relax. "I am a traveler who got into trouble at sea, which resulted in me sustaining grievous injuries. I had to be in this state temporarily in order to heal up." As he spoke, he got up from his previous position, where he'd been lying down. Watching him get up and stand on the surface of the water, the leader of the merfolk's pupils shrank. "Beholders and exemplary," the leader of the merfolk cried out involuntarily, his eyes now holding a trace of reverence towards Leyland. However, he wasn't all that surprised either. From what Leyland had done, it was evident that he was no ordinary person. "We are people from the Eden Trading Company. If you don't mind, you could come up our ship and get some rest. I believe the rest will be delighted to chat with an exemplary." The leader of the merfolk spoke reverently. This was the reason Leyland showed his strength. In a primitive world in an era during the Age of Discovery, there must be sins everywhere behind the scenes. The law of the jungle was utilized to the utmost. If this was just Leyland alone without any power, he would be robbed and then thrown to the bottom of the sea. Just the luxurious material of his clothing could be the cause of his death. The moment he showed his mysterious strength, the treatment he got immediately changed. Without making certain Leyland's strength and his background, the Eden Trading Company would not dare lay a hand on him. "Many thanks," Leyland expressed his gratitude aloofly, refusing the drawbridge that they let down for him and instead flying onto the deck. Standing on deck, Leyland was slightly surprised by these crew members' strange appearances. The few sailors beside him all looked very strange. There were some similar to the merfolk that Leyland had seen, but their tails had turned into 2 legs. They wore what laborers did, and clearly did not have a high status here. Besides the merfolk sailors, Leyland saw another type of creature. This was a person escorted by the merfolk that evidently had a higher status. However, their appearance was totally different from a regular human being, and they only had a large pupil. The pupil alone had a diameter of 1 decimeter, and around its socket, large amounts of tendrils hung down, forming something like limbs. Appearance-wise, it was very similar to the beholder Leyland saw in games in his previous world. "All right, though I'd long since guessed that this world wouldn't be made up of humans, this appearance is really quite rare." Leyland ridiculed it in his mind. Perhaps due to adapting to the environment or some other reason, there were multiple different tribes, but they all had bodies similar to humans. A head, 4 limbs, a torso became the most common structure of all beings, and there were at least 1 or 2 races similar to humans. Like the merfolk he'd seen, while they maintained having a tail on their lower bodies when in water, that instantly turned into humans' legs once they got on shore. Creatures that were completely different from humans like the beholder did exist, but were never that common. Leyland had already named this being the beholder tribe. In Purgatory World, it was unexpectedly this sort of race that was in charge and enslaving those similar to the human race. "Revered exemplary, please accept the sublime respect of I, Jiger Gaguno axed." One of the beholder's tendrils went upwards, and Leyland suddenly received spiritual undulations. The greetings within seemed to be rather flattering. "Greetings!" Leyland obviously had a more profound understanding of the usage of spiritual force, which was why his usage of it was effortless. However, what he found strange was that this beholder tribe used spiritual force, which was similar to brainwaves, to communicate. "Perhaps this form is because they're highly intelligent creatures." Leyland nodded inside. "You must be someone of the Seraph continent, yes. It is only at that area that there are humans." The gigantic beholder pupil stared hard at Leyland, and he could even see an inverted image of himself in the eye. After a short moment, the beholder sensed spiritual force that held information. "My apologies, but I must keep my origins a secret. I promised my mentor that before I gained any fame, I would not reveal my history," Leyland answered righteously, but that only made the other party more grim and respectful. "Your mentor must be an amazing exemplary. To become famous far and wide was extremely difficult even if on just 1 continent. To be able to do that meant he must be an extraordinarily powerful exemplary. He is indeed an elder worthy of respect, full of wisdom and resolution." A hint of nostalgia rose in Leyland's eyes, and he then asked Beholder, "I met with some troubles at sea and had to float on the surface for a long time. May I know where this is?" "Oh, this is the end of the shipping route of the Hale Continent, which makes it very close to the Hale Continent. You came so close but still got into troubles, and I can only say that you and your boat have very bad luck," the beholder seemed to say without malicious intent. Noticing the slip of its tongue, many tendrils waved around, flustered. "Oh, my apologies. I didn't say that on purpose. It's just that there are far too many storms and ferocious beasts in the ocean, and because there's no law or regulations, even the Golden Deity fleet can't say they're safe until they reach the port and stand on land." I understand. Leyland waved his arms, but a hint of sadness and lingering fear showed on his expression. I'm quite tired. Would it be possible for me to have a room and get some rest? Also, please send me to the nearest port. I'm willing to pay for it with something of equal value. While speaking, Leyland astutely realized there was someone spying on him from the shadows. This should be the exemplary that he had discovered previously. Their strength was not half bad and seemed to be at peak rank 3. They also had a few powerful magic artifacts and unique magic items. Seems like this is the protector or owner of this fleet who's at rank 3. With the AI chip's adjustments, his aura was also at around rank 3. With his mask of the dreamless, he was rather charming. This. Beholder seemed to hesitate, but immediately after, a streak of concealed spiritual force undulations was transmitted that caused it to change its words. No problem. We were planning to make a stop at the nearby Elia's port, and you can get off there. On our ship you are our most esteemed guest, so please don't mention anything about paying. Beholder's eyes squinted, which seemed to be a way of expressing its respect. All right. Leyland nodded, and under the guidance of a merperson that the Beholder called out, entered the hold of the ship. My lord, here's your room. If there's anything you need, please tell us. The merperson humbly lowered his head, and once Leyland got familiar with his room, retreated. It's not bad. Leyland looked around his surroundings. This was the higher levels of the ship, and besides important personnel, perhaps even the leader of the merfolk did not have the authority to stay here. Light blue shells and red coral decorations adorned the room, making it look beautiful. Inside, there was something like a bed that was covered with the fur of some unknown being. Just by looking at it, it was obvious that it was soft and smooth. What attracted Leyland's attention more, however, was the large blue pearl at the heart of the room. In the AI chip's scan, the pearl seemed to be breathing, sucking in the turbid air in the room, and after going through some unknown transformation, released pure oxygen and was even able to clean the air. This eliminated the fishy smell of the ocean. AI chip scan, Leyland commanded. Beep, mission established, beginning scan. The AI chip intoned loyally, and immediately after, probing undulations scanned through and did not miss any corners. Scan completed. Yet to find any suspicious items or spying spell formations. The AI chip intoned. All right, looks like they aren't playing any tricks. I just need another layer of protection so I can be at ease, though. With a tap of his finger, a blue rune appeared and rapidly disappeared into the wall. In the blink of an eye, a resplendent blue layer of light appeared within the hold of the ship and quickly disappeared. Defense and warning spell patterns completed. Activation of comprehensive control. Simultaneous detections ongoing. Once the AI chip sent information over, Leyland could finally completely relax. Ha! He lay on the soft bed and huffed out a sigh. At least I managed to regain a portion of my mobility before they found me, or things would have gotten complicated. However, after recovering up to this point, the rest of the injuries aren't that bad. I can even use external items. At this thought, Leyland's palm touched at his waist. Silver spatial rays flashed, and a dark red healing potion appeared in his palm. With Leyland's attainments as a grandmaster at potioneering, as well as the vast amount of resources provided by the Bloodline Union and Doe's imperial city of the Blazing Flame Monarch, he'd long since made a huge quantity of potions at the grandmaster level that he constantly kept at his side to deal with any unexpected situations. The expedition into Purgatory World was of utmost importance, and he obviously brought everything along. With my vitality and rank as a warlock, high-ranked potions probably won't do much for me unless they're primordial potions. The dark red potion didn't taste all that good, and even had a spicy taste that seemed to sting his nose. However, without even a flinch, Leyland drank it. The potion worked quickly. A flush first appeared on Leyland's face, before the sound of cracking was heard everywhere in his body, as if his bones were breaking. At the same time, it was flourishing with life like a plant. After treatment using potions was used a few times, Leyland no longer had the feebleness of before. Continent and dignitary, what's most important now is to figure out the general geography of Purgatory World. Leyland's face was extremely solemn, hidden beneath the mask of the dreamless. He only had about 2 years left, and the Purgatory World had quite a few continents. He had to determine where the Snake Dowager was. If she'd gone to another continent, it would take years of journeying to find her, which was something he just would not accept. It's a pity that those merfolk sailors aren't that intelligent, and even the beholder didn't seem to be very knowledgeable. In order to gain more precise information, I'd have to rely on the concealed rank 3 Magus. Knock, knock. At this moment, the door was lightly rapped. "Come in." "My lord." The merperson from before reservedly bowed towards Leyland. "Esteemed guest, Lord Jiger Dole has invited you to dinner with him." Dinner? Leyland grew slightly confused by that. It seemed like the healing process he'd gone through had taken quite a bit of time. "Of course, let us be off." However, he reacted in time. This Jiger Dole should be the powerful being he'd sensed on the ship before. With his identity as one who gave the orders, he should have great understanding of the purgatory world. Leyland had now recovered about half of his original strength, which was enough for him to take control of the fleet of ships and even search the soul of the rank 3 Magus. However, this was the purgatory world. Leyland needed to keep a low profile, and the bloodline force he had as a warlock was best not exhibited. If not, the chances of the Snake Dowager finding him would be increased by a great extent, which would be very disadvantageous for him. Besides, now that his safety was guaranteed, Leyland was willing to provide something of equal value to these people who had helped him, in exchange for what he wanted. Whatever it was, using violence to solve problems might be simple at the beginning, but it was easy to get addicted to this method, resulting in the firm mindset of using violence for all situations. Leyland felt that he hadn't gotten to that point yet, but it was necessary that he change. "My lord, please come with me." The merperson led the way respectfully, while Leyland followed behind at an average pace while speaking once in a while. Most of the time, Leyland was the one asking questions while the other party answered. It didn't seem abrupt at all, as if he trusted Leyland and even bared his soul without reservations. Occasionally using Dreamforce and all sort of confusion techniques didn't make Leyland feel the least bit ashamed. It was a pity that the merfolk weren't that intelligent, and information about their world was less important than filling their stomachs. Hence, Leyland heard things like the meals of the basic sailor aren't that tasty. That kelp should be fed to beagle beasts. The caviar of the list fish is the best. The large Tamaha spur octopus during the flood season have the most tender flesh, and similar information, which rendered Leyland speechless. These merfolk probably have gotten off their ship once or twice. They move about only on the ship. Leyland clutched his forehead, giving up on conversing with him further to gain intel. "Looks like if I want to do anything, I'll need to deal with that beholder." With this thought, Leyland followed the merperson to the topmost floor in the hold of the ship. A scarlet carpet, white tablecloth, silver tableware, and a candle holder had Leyland feeling like he'd returned to Earth and its aristocracy. The 4 walls with decorations used by different races, as well as this person of another race at the main seat, reminded Leyland that this was purgatory world. Hee. "Welcome, exemplary from afar. I am Jiger's father, and my name is rather long, so just call me Jiger Dole." Sitting at the head of the table was a large beholder. Compared to Jiger, the body of this beholder was even larger. Some of the tendrils on the ground were snow white and seemed to be aging. However, the dense spiritual force undulations that it emitted showed that it had reached peak rank 3 if using the rating of the Magus world. "Greetings, Jiger Dole. I am Ley." "Thank you so much for your help." Leyland introduced himself, and then sat at the other side of the table. "A spiritual energy that isn't half bad. Such purity means there's a possibility of developing into soul force, which seems quite similar to the spirit-sucking creature in the legends." Leyland sized it up, realizing that the spiritual energy it emitted was different than that in the Magus world. "The owner of our Eden Trading Company is a very benevolent and just sage. I imagine they would not mind us saving you. On the contrary, if they were to find out that we had met someone in need and ignored them, they would probably get mad." Jiger Dole, who was in the middle, chuckled and then transmitted a spiritual force undulation. "Serve the dishes." A few female merfolk from the kitchen carefully walked out holding earthen jars that emitted heat. One of them stood beside Leyland and placed the head of the jar towards Leyland's silver bowl, beginning to pour. "This." Leyland was slightly disconcerted. Seeing this dish that he had no clue was soup or the main course, he began to hesitate slightly. In front of him was clearly soup. Amidst the dense and creamy light green soup were reddish and white eyeballs floating. These eyeballs' shape and size were similar to humans, and Leyland frowned slightly. "AI chip scan." A flicker of blue appeared in Leyland's eyes and quickly scanned the soup in front of him. Beep. Scan completed. Derived composition: protein, glutamic acid, high-energy albumin. Unknown trace element determined to be from the eyes of a physically large tribe. Great effects in regaining energy and can restore some spiritual force. What? Dear guest of mine, do you not like it? The beholder Jiger Dole opposite him ate with gusto, its many tendrils agilely using the ladle and making slurping sounds. The merfolk eyeball soup from the deep gem coral sea is quite famous. Oh, I was just wondering about that. Leyland laughed and scooped up some soup. No matter what the taste was like, it would at least give him nutrition and help him restore spiritual force, which was not bad. Could it be because it has such a large eyeball that it has a huge desire for the eyes of other creatures? Seeing how the other party was devouring the food, Leyland judged him silently. With the dinner, time passed quickly. Leyland and Jiger Dole chatted. While conversing, Leyland astutely found that Jiger Dole had secretly made inquiries and spied on his history, and had even set up discreet spells that would detect lies. Leyland could understand where it was coming from, since it was strange for there to suddenly be a strange being in the middle of the deep ocean. However, what kind of wily old fox was Leyland? He not only did not reveal his past, but spoke in a roundabout way, obtaining much information from it. After the dinner, Leyland returned to his room and closed the cabin door. "AI Chip, how is it?" Immediately after, Leyland half lay on the bed and closed his eyes, silently communicating with the AI Chip. Beep. Conversation from before has been recorded. Deleted 68.23% of useless portions and obtained definite intel, beginning reorganization. Soon enough, a 3D projection of the map was projected into Leyland's mind. As he had been able to see a rough outline from outside the barrier to the world, the map was now more intricate with information from Jiger Dole, and even the precise scale had been obtained. There were 7 gigantic continents in Purgatory World. Each had an area as large as the Magus world's central continent. Between each continent, there was an enormous sea, and their large organizations within the sea that even rank 6 magi did not dare intrude on. Around the continents and sea were a series of small islands that were like gems and pearls on beaches, decoration for the ocean. Determined host's location. Nearby the Hale continent, a blue shipping route had been clearly marked out. The area where the route began was where Leyland was situated, marked with a red dot. At the heart of the shipping route was a fragmented mark of an island, as well as a sign with Magus letters, Elia's port. The Hale continent. Leyland stroked his chin and sunk into deep thought. Based on what Jiger Dole said, the Hale continent is land governed by another race filled with barrenness and primitivism. Many areas still have yet to develop and find joy in killing as well as giving up offerings. On the Hale continent, there is one species with the most beings around, and that is the high-energy snakes. It's rumored that deep inside Hale continent, there are temples for all snakes. If I didn't guess wrong, the Hale continent should be the Snake Dowager's territory. Leyland's eyes suddenly sparkled with light. While traversing through the world barrier, he intentionally moved based on his bloodline and landed near his bloodline source. It seemed that while he was slightly off, he was that off. If not, if he were to land on some other continent, Leyland would just die of tears if he had to travel such a distance. Meanwhile, Leyland was pondering other things that Jiger Dole had mentioned. Based on what it said, there is a dignitary leader on each continent. They have the power to destroy the continent and are worshipped by all races and turned into a religion of sorts. The Beholder tribe evidently worshipped the ancient Trial's Eye, Leyland thought to himself.